It's officially driver season, and no company warrants more interest year in and year out than Taylormade. And with the sleek and modern look of the Qi35, that's never been more true. As a certified club fitter, I'll be taking you along for my full test and review of each one of the three main heads. So watch this before you go ahead and pick one up for yourself to figure out which one of these is going to be the best option for you. So the Qi35 Max, the ultra forgiving driver this year that will help produce more distance on off-centered hits and more forgiveness overall. So Taylormade has almost the same driver lineup as last year. They have the 10K Max model, they have the Core or standard model, and then they have the low spin beast, the LS model. While there are two other heads, they have a light model and then they have a fitting specific model. We're not going to be reviewing those because those are more niche heads that 99% of the population isn't going to have to mess with. We'll go over the looks after the testing, and spoiler alert, they're really good. But for now, let's go over the technology that Taylormade has introduced in their Max head. There are 5 materials Taylormade has used in all of their heads: chromium carbon, steel, aluminum, tungsten, and titanium. There's a 34-gram tungsten weight at the very back of this driver that's going to bring that CG or center of gravity lower on the face, and it's going to create the most optimal launch for any 10K driver ever made, is what Taylormade's claiming. All of these drivers have through slot speed pocket, twist face, and a 4-degree neck sleeve, which we've been accustomed to seeing on Taylormade drivers in the past, really since I think the Stealth models. So all you need to know is that these drivers are packed with technology that hopefully will lead to performance gains. One last thing I want to mention before we get to actually hitting this club is the looks. I know I said I'd wait until after testing, but I just can't wait. They look so good. So I wasn't a huge fan of the shiny black crown they had on all the heads last year, especially in the Max head. It kind of made it look big and bulky, but they've gone to a little bit more matte look with a carbon gray head, and I think it looks so good. It especially looks better in the Max head, and that also could have something to do with the dark shadowy ring around the back edge of the driver. So at address, it makes that footprint look a little bit smaller, but whatever it is, it looks a lot better, especially the Max head. They also got rid of the light gray line that separated the face from the crown in the Qi10. The Qi35, especially at address, just looks a lot more seamless when you set up behind the ball. So all of that being said, this driver could be my favorite looking driver line since the original M1 or M2. All right, so now's the fun part. We're gonna hit some golf shots. The Max model that we're gonna test in this video should have the highest launch and spin, but it also should have the most forgiveness. So we're gonna hit some shots now and kind of take a look at the data as we go. So the Max model is already impressing me. I know it's a super forgiving head and it's supposed to have 10K MOI, but that usually means the spin is gonna be a little bit higher. And so far we've hit 2 shots and it's been 1700 spin and 2000 spin. So it's not spinning up as much as I thought. Now granted, that one was middled and hit really well. So we'll see as testing goes on if that maintains throughout the whole testing. So this drive is an example of why the 10K MOI can be such an important factor in a driver. You know, I promise you it wasn't hit great. It was hit kind of low off the toe a little bit, so it should have spun up a little bit, which it did. You know, it got to 2700 spin, which is definitely nothing to complain too bad about, but instead of going, you know, miles offline, which I felt like it should have, it stayed, you know, relatively straight, and it maybe even caught the fairway. At worst, we're in the rough. A couple more shots here with the Max model. I'm really impressed so far. I'm really liking the way it feels and sounds. Oh no. So that's another drive that off the club face, I thought that was gonna go a fairway right. And you know, I guess that extra 10K MOI in the driver is really helping me out because, you know, it went, not only did it stay straight or come back a little bit, but it carried 309 and rolled out to 334 with 1800 spins. So I am wildly impressed by the capabilities of this thing right now. One more, we're gonna really let this rip and see how far we can get it out there. So I know I didn't quite get it as far as the last one, but I felt like that one was hit a little bit more out of the middle of the face. It spun a little bit more. I think the last one I hit a little bit high on the face, causing it to lose a little bit of spin and maybe roll out a little bit more. But that was, you know, my perfect driver swing. And the numbers are essentially perfect. That just shows that the MOI in the driver actually does help, because the one I hit the last shot, I really didn't feel like it was going to be as good, and then ended up being honestly even better than that one, which I felt like I middled. So somewhere in there, the extra forgiveness on this model is doing its job. So these are the numbers for the Qi35 Max driver. That spin, stayed right around 2100, which is kind of exactly where I want to see it. Smash factor was pretty good. Club head speed was around 118, 119, which is kind of where I want to see it. Ball speed didn't drop down like a lot of super forgiving drivers are known to do. The other thing with the Max head is that it's going to be a little bit easier to launch, so that height you might see a little bit of a bump in that height, which isn't going to be great for every type of player, but for somebody like me who launches it pretty low in general, that height could really be beneficial to me. So after fully testing this driver, I'm blown away. Gone are the days of not playing a forgiving driver because it's going to spin too much or it looks too bulky. This is a 10K driver head, so it has more forgiveness than we've ever seen from a driver outside the past, year and a half. That being said, it didn't spin at 5,000. It didn't lose me, 40, 50 yards of distance because of that spin and it just ballooning up in the air. It looked great behind the ball, and I hit more fairways than I feel like I deserved because of that extra forgiveness. So while I have tested the Core model and the LS model, the other two main heads, this one gets me the most excited because if you're a 30 handicap or a scratch golfer, there's some setup where this driver head could really be the one for you. And also as a fitter, this gets me excited because a lot of the time when somebody would come in with a lot of speed, we would kind of be handcuffed as fitters. If they had a ton of speed, but maybe weren't the most accurate driver of the golf ball, they really had two options. One being get a low spin head that's going to optimize distance, but not going to give them near the forgiveness level that they need. Or two, give them a really forgiving head, but have them lose 30, 40 yards of distance because that ball is just going to spin too much and it's going to balloon straight up in the air and fall right out of the sky. This head, however, and a lot of the other 10K drivers that are out there, walk that line really well and make it really, really easy to find that balance between distance and forgiveness. So just in general, I'm really excited about where the equipment in the game of golf is and where it's headed. Now the Core head, instead of the big 34-gram tungsten weight in the back like we saw on the Max head, it's going to have two interchangeable weights in the front and back. This is to customize your trajectory and get the desired launch conditions from your driver. Taylormade claims that in the weight back position, the dispersion shrinks 13%, and in the weight forward position, you gain 5 yards of distance. And all three drivers do still include the through slot speed pocket, the twist face technology, and the 4-degree neck sleeve that we've been accustomed to seeing from Taylormade drivers for years now. The LS head comes in at $50 more than the other two heads, and instead of 2 weight ports, you get 3 to really allow you to customize your spin, launch, and just overall shot shaping. The LS is also a little bit more of a squashed and oval shape than the other two, which upon first examination, I wasn't, overly fond of, but then I put it on a shaft and I put it behind the ball, and behind the ball at address, it's my favorite looking of the three, and it's not particularly close. Now, as far as the characteristics of each driver, the LS head, not surprisingly, is going to have the lowest spin, the lowest forgiveness, and the lowest launch of any of the three models, while the Core model is going to fall somewhere between the LS and the Max model. The one thing that surprised me about the LS head is that it's still 460 cc's, which is the legal limit for drivers. We've become accustomed to seeing LS heads be 445 or even 430 cc's, but not here. So that could mean, a little extra added forgiveness in the LS model, which I'm excited to test. All right, now that we got the boring stuff, the technology out of the way, let's get to the fun part and hit some golf balls. We'll start with the Core model here. We'll hit some shots and we'll kind of go over the stats as we go. And then when I'm done, I'll show you all the stats put together. So while those numbers may look the same as the Max model, if you went ahead and watched that video, the one thing that's noticeably different with that shot is that the height is a little bit lower than we saw on the Max head, which is what we expected, but that's just one thing to think about when you're hitting and comparing the two models. So that's one that we obviously didn't hit great, but we hit it low on the face and we hit it a little bit off the toe. But in the Max head, the 10K MOI head, I hit a shot very, very similar to that, and it ended up definitely better than that one. So I can see the difference in forgiveness already after 3 shots. So that would be an example of a really well-struck shot. I'm not shocked that, you know, this head is also very, very good when it's hit out of the middle of the face. But again, look at that height, under 100. This is gonna launch a lot lower than the Max model, which could be a good or a bad thing depending on what you want out of your driver. So we obviously got that one out there pretty good. We got it to 340. I mean, we're not chasing distance, but if you watch the Max head model review, we hit shots like that, but the forgiveness level was so much higher, and those shots, instead of going right and missing the fairway right, kind of stayed in the fairway a little bit. So, you know, overall, I'm leaning Max head here. And then it does that. You know, I think the driver heard me there and made me want to eat my words, because those numbers are some of the most impressive that I've seen out of a driver test. So here were the numbers for the Qi35 Core model. As we can see, that spin was slightly lower than the Max head, but the dispersion was a lot worse, as you can see now. The carry and total distance was about the same. We did get a little bit more rollout with the Core model, which we're not shocked about. It's not gonna launch as high, which means it's gonna roll out a little bit more. So overall, because of that dispersion shrinkage and the lack of drop off in ball speed, I still lean the Max model over the Core model. Now we're gonna jump into the LS testing and see how it compares to the other two models. I'm excited for this one, but not at the same time. I'm excited to see the distance potential, but I'm kind of a little worried for the dispersion that we might see. So as we can see from those last two, we've definitely seen an increase in club speed and a decrease in spin rate. That last one spun at 1600, but the dispersion, like I kind of was worried about, is not great. Let's see if we can't middle one and find the middle of the fairway here. So yeah, this is just, you know, definitely not as forgiving. That was a really bad strike, obviously, and it just spun up at 3,700 spin, and it only went, you know, 288 instead of the normal 320, 330 that we've been seeing. I am gonna take this one out of the table that you see at the end, just because it would skew the results, and I don't wanna do that because that would be unfair to the driver. So as we can see with the numbers here, the spin rate on the LS was the only one of the three heads that was under 2,000 average spin. I believe it was also the longest, with 310 carry and 337 total on average. And this really wasn't even my best showing with the driver. Average 147 smash. I believe I was 148 or 149 with the other two heads. But as we can see from the dispersion screen, we had three that were really, really good, one that was okay, a little bit off to the right, and then we had three that were not great at all, missing fairways, maybe going OB, especially that one right. So overall, the LS head kind of did exactly what we expected it to do. So my overall thoughts on the Qi35 Core and LS. Starting with the Core model, I think it did exactly what I expected it to do. It wasn't as forgiving as the Max model, but it also wasn't as low spinning as the LS. It was kind of somewhere in that middle ground. I do think it was slightly better than the Qi10 though, just from a performance perspective and definitely from a looks perspective. The performance was pretty consistent across the board. I especially thought I got a little bit more forgiveness in this year's Qi35 than last year's Qi10 in the Core model specifically. Then as far as the LS head, it kind of is what it is with an LS head at this point. It's gonna spin at absolutely nothing, you know, really, really low. It's gonna go forever, but it's gonna be really, really unforgiving, and it's gonna look kind of intimidating when you put it behind the ball. Which that shouldn't deter you from considering it. You know, if you're a good ball striker and a good driver of the golf ball, but struggle with spin, the LS model could absolutely be the right one for you. Overall, however, out of the three main drivers in this lineup from Taylormade, my winner is the Qi35 Max. Forgiveness is not a bad thing. I think a lot of golfers, when they get recommended a super forgiving or ultra forgiving head, they automatically associate it with, oh, this person is calling me bad. And that's not the case anymore. 10K MOI drivers are here, and they're here to stay. Taylormade and Ping set the tone with theirs last year. Taylormade this year has kind of grown on that and really built on it with a much better model, in my opinion, in the Qi35. Cobra's also getting in on the action, and I'm sure other companies will follow suit as the years go on. So yeah, you pair the extra forgiveness with the low enough spin characteristics of the Qi35 Max, and I think you have a winner of a driver overall. There you have it. That's it for the Qi35 testing. Make sure you guys stay tuned for the Callaway Elite and the Ping G440 driver reviews that are going to be coming your way soon. Guys, thanks for sticking around. Make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe button down below. It helps me out a ton. And until next time, peace out.